Wow, that's actually so dope that just 3 people just came up to speak about community. It feels very organic to be able to host so many people. So next up, we have Lucas Manuel. There you are. Lucas Manuel is currently a senior smart contract engineer at Phoenix Labs and Spark Protocol, and working on the very fascinating field of tokenizing real-world assets. He's got a ton of blockchain experience, from Ernst & Young to MakerDAO to Maple Finance, and now at Spark Protocol. He was also the founder and chair of Queen University's blockchain innovation community, where he became involved in the grassroots movement among the students that developed a rapid interest in the space in 2017. I love the student involvement in the blockchain space. He was gracious enough to accept the speaking slot as of last week. So yeah, and the title of the talk is MakerDAO's Endgame and Spark Protocol. So without further ado, Lucas Manuel.
Awesome.
You want to understand?
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Just going to move this over here. All right. So today I'm going to talk about Spark and Endgame, but I'm mainly going to focus on MakerDAO Endgame. So I'm going to give an overview of it. Today I'm going to give an overview. I'm going to talk about the problems that MakerDAO Endgame is trying to solve. I'm going to give an overview of SubDAOs. I'm going to talk about AI and governance, the new allocation system that Maker will use, the tokenomics of the new system, and insolvency protection in the new MakerDAO. So what is Endgame? Endgame is a major update, some would call it an overhaul to the MakerDAO system, designed to enhance efficiency, resilience, and governance participation. So MakerDAO has been around for a while in DeFi. They've grown to manage massive amounts of capital and have had a lot of members join their governance system, and has operated as a DAO for a long time. And over that time, there have been some problems that have arisen. 4 main problems that Endgame is aiming to solve is high complexity in governance, voter apathy, politics, and growth. So I've witnessed this firsthand. The MakerDAO governance process has become increasingly complex over time. There's been, over 100 Maker improvement proposals. The whole system has become very esoteric, and less people understand what's truly going on in the system. Voter apathy is another problem. So due to the fact that MKR voting and governance is on-chain, as well as this esoteric nature of this highly complex system, a lot of people have just decided to stop participating in governance, which is a big issue. And another thing is that since it's a very large, single-threaded, slow-moving governance system, in order for entities to get funding to work on MakerDAO, they have to form relationships with people, and a certain degree of politics arises within the system, and no one is a fan of that. So the new structure aims to address that. And the last problem is growth. So the main goal of MakerDAO is to sustainably and scalably distribute DAI to as much people as possible. And a recent way that they've been trying to do that is through real-world assets. And the single-threaded, really slow-moving governance system has made this process of onboarding real-world assets and making real-world deals very difficult and very slow, and just introduced a lot of friction. So it's been harder to scale DAI to the place that it needs to get to. So now I will talk about SubDAOs. So SubDAOs are a new concept that will be introduced under Endgame. And so SubDAO is basically what it sounds like. It's a DAO that will operate under MakerDAO. It will have its own governance token and community. It will operate as its own DAO, but it does have oversight from Maker. And the idea behind this, right, is to have MakerCore start to become this extremely simplified, immutable, ossified core governance system that is very simple. And everything that is more complex and evolving and requires more thought and complexity will be delegated to these multiple SubDAOs. So these SubDAOs will start to have, they'll naturally form and they'll have highly aligned and specialized communities that share a common vision. This is one of the things that was really tough in Maker, was it's such a massive ecosystem with so many participants that it's very hard to get alignment and move forward towards a common goal. But with these SubDAOs, people can group together in what they want to accomplish within their own vision of distributing DAI and can go and do that. And they can go and do that and actually compete with each other and continuously evolve together and actually improve together over time. And the idea is that the best SubDAOs will get the most allocation of DAI and will grow and will become the most successful. So it'll be continuously evolving, they'll be competing with each other. So there's going to be two types of SubDAOs to start. There'll be facilitator SubDAOs, which will facilitate governance, provide arbitration and scope frameworks. But the one that I will be focusing on for the rest of the presentation is allocator DAOs. So allocator DAOs are going to be managing a portion of the MakerDAO balance sheet, and we'll be managing this in a diverse portfolio. So they'll be generating revenue for MakerCore, but they'll also be generating revenue for their own SubDAO. So how this new system is going to work is Maker is going to lend DAI to all of these SubDAOs at a common base rate. And each of these SubDAOs will take this capital and allocate it into DeFi, into RWA. They can market make DAI. They can do whatever they want. Within reason, Maker Governance has oversight. But the point is that they keep the spread above the base rate. So this is a really key concept, is Maker is happy to lend out DAI at a lower yield in order to have a simplified, safer system where they're only managing a very small set of borrowers, which are the SubDAOs. And in reward for doing that, the SubDAOs are able to allocate that capital as they would like and can keep the spread. So they're all going to compete with each other to generate the best risk-averse distribution of DAI. And eventually, the plan is to actually remove the existing CDP mechanism out of Maker. So this will actually entirely delegate any decentralized collateral borrowing outside of the core Maker system, so that the only people or the only entities that are borrowing DAI out of the core Maker accounting are actually these SubDAOs. So you can see it's a massive, massive simplification of Maker's accounting. Instead of managing thousands of CDPs that can be, are governed by oracles and can be liquidated, and it's a highly complex system with a lot of moving parts and moving positions, the MakerCore system will only care about each of these allocator DAOs and just making sure that these are all safe. So before I go any further, I have to mention that Maker will be undergoing a rebrand. So over the last couple of years, we've noticed that MKR and DAI largely are treated as two separate brands by newcomers to the space. They treat them as two separate concepts. And so we look at Endgame as an opportunity to introduce a new cohesive brand that can unify the governance token and the stablecoin so that people can come in and understand what's going on basically immediately. It's really important to understand that DAI and MKR will not be altered in any way. They'll continue to exist on-chain in perpetuity and will serve their original uses. So going forward in this presentation, I'm going to refer to DAI as new stable and MKR as new governance token. So NST and NGT. So the next thing I'll talk about really quickly is AI and governance. So as you guys are all, I'm sure, well aware, there's been a massive explosion of usage of AI technology in practice. And so one of the things that we wanted to incorporate into Endgame is leveraging large language models to increase accessibility of information for governance participants and lower the barrier of entry for people to participate in governance. So like I mentioned earlier, governance in Maker has become like a highly complex, esoteric sort of ecosystem of actors. but incorporating AI into the system will allow people to come in and feel like they can participate very quickly. And this is really important because the more people that you have involved that understand what's going on, it actually reduces the possibility for corruption. Whenever there is a system where very few actors actually understand what's going on, there is a possibility for them to behave in a way that's beneficial for themselves, but not necessarily beneficial for the broader good of the system. So having this impartial actor that has a focus on the public good of Maker, kind of facilitating different interactions with the governance system, will just massively improve governance and ensure that a lot of checks and balances are put in place. All right, now I'm going to talk about the allocation system. Hopefully the font is big enough here, but what you can see is you've got the MakerCore engine, you've got the allocator DAOs, and then you have different places to allocate funds. So each of these allocator DAOs has the permission to mint NST and then allocate it. They can't mint, a trillion NST in one shot. They're, rate limited by the Maker system, but they are able to mint NST at will and deploy it. So you can see here, I've tried to demonstrate that each of these allocator DAOs are allocating the NST to different strategies. So some of them are like market making NST, USDC on Uniswap v3. Some of them are swapping into USDC and deploying into US treasuries in the existing, Monetalis, Coinbase custody, block tower structures. Allocator DAO 3 is deploying into Spark Lend and providing a venue for people to borrow NST against their decentralized collateral, much like the existing Maker system. And what's nice about Spark is that the existing CDP mechanism in Maker was developed a long time ago, and it's, as you guys know, it's like isolated for each position. And so one of the things that, as a user, I really wanted was to be able to borrow borrow stables across like a portfolio of collateral, which Aave offers. But one of the things that Aave has that I didn't necessarily like was the variable interest rates. So this accomplishes both by lending at a constant rate to Spark. Spark has a constant rate that's like very predictable and only changes with Maker governance. So yeah, this is how NST will get deployed throughout the DeFi ecosystem. And I added, your protocol here because anything can be considered. So the reverse of this, right? When we want to reduce the supply of DAI, we can just claim back from all of these positions. But what I find really interesting is every quarter, the profit from all of these positions will be collected in MakerCore. Like they'll be continuously collected into MakerCore. But what will happen is every quarter, MakerCore Governance will go back and retroactively evaluate each of the allocator DAO's actions over that quarter and will apply rewards or penalties given on their actions. So each allocator DAO is given a specific set of rules. So capital requirements, there's like certain rates that people pay for holding idle DAI, for example, stuff like that. The MakerCore Governance will go in and evaluate all of this blockchain data from a whole quarter and will keep the funds that MakerCore will take from that, but they will reward the spread and any rewards and apply any penalties to the allocator DAOs. So the allocator DAOs will earn this source of revenue from that. So this is really interesting because, MakerCore can influence how these allocator DAOs behave by applying these monetary rewards and penalties retroactively. All right, so now I'm going to talk about tokenomics. So to start, first of all, NGT will now have the ability to expand the supply continuously. This will be really important for growing the SubDAO ecosystem. So to start, we're going to just have a very simple mechanism, which is a constant issuance of NGT to each of the SubDAOs. This is to bootstrap their ecosystem, to incentivize participation, to allow these SubDAOs to compensate developers and contributors and all this kind of stuff. But what's really cool is the next phase. So the next phase is MakerCore will allocate NGT on a weighted distribution according to how much junior capital each of these allocator DAOs has posted up. So this junior capital is denominated in what we call Elixir. So this is NGT, NST, Uni V2 LP positions. So this is seeding liquidity for the NGT, NST tokens and holding those LP tokens as junior capital. So each of these SubDAOs have a junior capital requirement that's enforced by MakerCore, but this is actually going above and beyond and going above those requirements. So in order to incentivize that behavior, MakerCore will proportionally reward each of these SubDAOs with NGT tokens according to how much junior capital they have posted up. So to make this diagram simple, I kept it in NGT tokens, but what will actually happen is for each of these SubDAOs, there will be a token valuation that's performed by MakerCore. So whether the token is overvalued or undervalued, the SubDAO token, the MakerCore Governance will perform a different action for each of the SubDAOs. So in this example, allocator 1 is overvalued. So we're using the proportionally minted NGT to buy NGT, NST, Uni V2 LP positions or Elixir tokens, and just basically sending those directly to the allocator DAO. If the allocator DAO is undervalued, which it will be for the majority of its initial existence, the point is for this action to happen for a long time until this action happens, the NGT will be minted and will be added as liquidity for sub-elixir, which in this case is for, I'm just calling it for, SubDAO token NGT Uniswap V2 LP position. So what happens is MakerCore will mint the NGT, buy this LP position, and then actually burn those LP tokens. So they're buying the SubDAO token, market buying the SubDAO token to help increase the price, seeding liquidity for it, and then adding like basically permanent liquidity because they're burning the LP tokens. All right, and then the next thing that's happening that's exciting is Subdial Farming. So each of these SubDAOs will have a fair launch, which means that there will be no pre-allocation of any of these SubDAO tokens to any founders or VCs or anything like that. It's all starting from zero, each of these SubDAOs. So users that stake NST into each of these farms will earn the respective SubDAO tokens proportionate to their position. So what's really exciting about this is anyone can come in at the ground floor of any of these SubDAOs and actually have a seat at the table of their governance because they can come in and actually, put in a large stack of NST and earn like a significant share of the SubDAO tokens and be able to influence governance. So that's very exciting. The next thing is these SubDAO tokens will then be able to be used to farm NGT. So these SubDAO tokens will have value for two reasons right off the bat. First, they will be able to have inherent value because they can farm NGT, which has a previous value. They will be continuously earning NGT from MakerCore, and they will be continuously earning large amounts of revenue from the spread of allocating NST. So each of these allocator DAOs will be managing very large portfolios and keeping the spreads and then earning revenue on that. All right, so this is my last part, which is insolvency protection. So this is one part that I really like about this new system. It's a lot more resilient. So as I mentioned before, the current Maker system with CDPs has thousands of positions with highly volatile collateral, with oracles to dictate when to liquidate the funds, and we have to rely on the DeFi ecosystem to liquidate that capital. What's really nice about this new system is that MakerCore only has to worry about 4 borrowers and continuously monitor their position. And if MakerCore deems that they are getting into some risky territory, they have 2 layers of protection before they get to the core assets. First is the junior capital. So MakerCore, if they deem that the debt is higher than they would like it to be based on their assets, they can come in and liquidate the allocator DAO's junior capital position. So they can seize their USDC, seize their ETH, seize their Elixir tokens that they'll definitely have, and then convert that to NST to pay off their position, to reduce their exposure. That's the first line of defense. The second line of defense is equity liquidation. So this is really interesting because MakerCore has the ability to mint the SubDAO's governance token and sell that on the open market to get NST to cover that SubDAO's position. So this is a very scary diagram for governance token participants, right? Because as a large governance token holder, the last thing that I want is for MakerCore to dilute me out of my position, right? So this heavily incentivizes all of the governance participants within each of the SubDAOs to allocate NST very conservatively, because the last thing that they want is an equity liquidation that would wipe them out of their position. And then if you have a situation where you've exhausted all of the junior capital and have literally minted, infinite governance tokens and completely exhausted the entire market cap of the governance token, then MakerCore can seize all of the assets and then deal with them internally. So this is, a very unlikely scenario because of these two initial protections, but this is the last thing that would happen. All right, so why am I excited about this? So there's four things. First, there is really a lot of reduced complexity in the core system. So moving the complex decision making to these specialized, fast-moving, highly aligned SubDAOs, and distilling the usage of Maker to what it's good at, which is minting stablecoins at a really low cost of capital, and managing tail risk and just managing the solvency of the core system. I am excited about increased governance participation. Like I said before, it's a fair launch for all these SubDAOs, so there's really a unique opportunity to get into the ground floor of these SubDAOs and participate in a governance ecosystem that will be managing very large portfolios of capital very quickly. Leveraging AI to reduce the complexity and increase the auditability of the system, I think, accomplishes two things. It gets more people involved, and it keeps the system more honest, which is really important. Reducing the responsibilities of MakerCore Governance and just focusing on the crucial core concepts, I think will be really good for MakerCore as well. I think, anyone in core governance will agree, Maker is spread very, very far and wide and thin currently with their governance system, and having them focus on what they're good at is what's best. Third thing I'm really excited about is increased system resilience. So having this junior capital and having this valuable SubDAO equity protecting MakerCore from insolvency is really just a very good thing. Having the MakerCore system accounting vastly simplified, I think, is also really beneficial. Makes it much easier to audit and much easier to understand. And what's really great too is having a significantly more diversified risk profile. So each of these SubDAOs will each have their own individually managed diverse risk portfolio. And the idea is over time to onboard more and more SubDAOs so that it becomes this rich ecosystem of competing allocator DAOs that are all allocating to different strategies. And the last thing is increased scalability. So specialized SubDAOs are able to move a lot faster, make smarter, quicker, more efficient decisions, and allocate capital. The competitive nature of these SubDAOs will, I think, will bring a lot of financial experts to the ecosystem, because it's a really exciting opportunity for someone who knows a lot about traditional finance to come in and just really optimize these systems and beat out other SubDAOs and make a really big impact in the system. Reduced governance overhead is a huge thing for allocating capital to new positions. Having more streamlined, aligned communities will just allow for much quicker decision making and more effective decision making within each of these SubDAOs, which just leads to a larger supply of DAI and more adoption of the stablecoin. And the last thing I think is that the rebrand will lead to greater adoption. For newcomers, it will come in, they'll see this like unified brand that makes sense to them and encourages them to participate. I think it will help realize the vision of DAI becoming the global unbiased stable currency. All right, thank you. Here is a QR code. If anyone's curious, Rune, the founder of MakerDAO, just did a 5.5 hour long podcast explaining Endgame in a ton more detail than I just did. So if anyone's curious, you can scan that QR code right there. Does anyone have any questions? Yep, yeah, great question. So yes, definitely, this will happen in multiple phases. The allocation system will probably get introduced first into governance, actually potentially even before SubDAOs, just to make sure that the smart contract infrastructure is working correctly before introducing into the broader system. It's all kind of in flux in terms of the roadmap, in terms of like timelines. But it will come into a phased approach, definitely. And then regarding the safeguards, yes, absolutely. Like MakerCore will be watching each of the SubDAOs like a hawk, making sure that they're managing their assets correctly and that they're not getting too centralized in their governance decisions, basically. Yep. What do you mean by correlated with the core?
Like I'm assuming if I want to create a SubDAO, then I would need to abide by the tokenomics of MakerDAO. But let's say if I wanted to take some of the tokenomics in the SubDAO, but then have my own independent thing.
Yeah, so all of these SubDAOs will be operating, like their day-to-day operations will be fully independently managed by their own governance community. They do have oversight, but the idea is that the day-to-day operations that MakerCore Governance doesn't want to get involved in will be facilitated entirely by the SubDAOs. Regarding the tokenomics, I'm sure that in the future, the tokenomics will evolve and proposals will be made and potentially new ideas will get incorporated. I would be surprised if that didn't happen. But yeah, each of these SubDAOs is intended to operate individually so that they're competing with each other.
So you have the three systems of reclaiming assets, let's say, from SubDAO, starting from the junior capital to the equity and then the asset seizure. I was curious how you can guarantee that the assets are seizable, right? It seems like they could be in a wide variety of positions, smart contracts, off-chain.
Yeah.
So is that going to be more of just enforced by game theory kind of threat of the other two, or is there a way to enforce that?
Yeah, so the hardest sort of, first of all, everything will be able to be facilitated on chain regarding the accounting of the positions. So the SubDAOs will manage all these different assets and they will be seizable on chain. The liquidation of the assets, like real world assets, will be performed by the relevant entities under MakerDAO. But I don't see any situation where the assets wouldn't be seizable because it would be encoded into the smart contracts that would be possible. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, okay, so there's kind of on-chain representations of those positions, regardless of what they are, and that can be either enforced as smart contracts, you can also facilitate with on-chain legal infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, well, there's a complete disconnect between the real world assets. They're an abstract representation on chain.
Yeah.
Whether you can seize them and whether you can get paid is a completely different issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Anything else?
Is there a limit on the number of SubDAOs that you can create?
No. Theoretically, there could be, 100 SubDAOs in the future. The more, after a certain point, the more SubDAOs, the better for Maker, because as long as they have functional, decentralized, efficient DAO structures, MakerCore benefits from the diversity of having many SubDAOs. So it's in the best interest of MakerCore to facilitate the launch of new SubDAOs.
How many are you expecting?
We're starting with 4 is the plan. And then we're really I think we're gonna let the tokenomics mature and get put into practice and grow out the structures. But I do hope to see, 30, 40 SubDAOs someday. I'm not sure on what time horizon that would be, but I think it's possible, and I think it will happen. Yep.
What prevents a SubDAO like Spark that gets very popular and has the majority of the government submissions of NGTs to crowd out all of the other SubDAOs, kind of like a convex convert situation?
It's a good question. So I guess, what do you mean?
Like if Spark is the most popular,
They're generating the most revenue?
Launch first, and they're the most dominant one, you would expect a majority of the emissions from MakerDAO to go to Spark, right? Which means now Spark has like majority governance control over whatever actions are happening one level up.
Yeah. Yeah, I should delineate the SubDAO from Spark. So Spark will be a protocol that SubDAOs will allocate to. So Spark will be operating as an independent DeFi protocol, and the NGT emissions will go to the SubDAOs that can generate the most revenue and hold the most Elixir tokens. So they'll each be competing with each other. They can all allocate to Spark. I think what you might be referring to or asking is like yield farming into Spark. That remains to be seen. That there could be some deals that get worked out between the SubDAOs and Spark to kind of facilitate that sort of thing. That it honestly remains to be seen. But the idea is that the best risk-adjusted returns will sort of converge, and the SubDAOs should scale at like roughly the same rate, because there will be sort of obvious options over time to go into, like treasuries, for example. Anyone else? All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, one more round of applause for our 2 speakers, David and Lucas, today. Man, it's honestly so awesome. Like, my heart is so full just to see all of you all gathered here, and it's just, kind of very organic. And yeah, we got a lot of pizza. We have a little too much beers left still, so stick around, network a little bit, and get comfortable. Is anyone working on interop or cross-chain here by any chance? Yeah? You might want to speak with Kirill, this gentleman right in front of you. We're trying to incentivize cross-chain use cases with the Builders program. So, cool. Thank you guys all. Thank you all for attending and coming today. We'll see you guys at the next one. So, thank you.